Well, what's good, party people? This is According to Woods, and I have the honor and privilege of talking to a mixed martial artist, the host of the Angry Nerd podcast. He's the one and only. Oh man, I the pronunciation of your name, Mr. Wade,
Arshion.
Arshion Wade. There you go, dude. Like we were kind of talking off air, but I mean, I was listening to the podcast, and just your intro alone makes you in that echelon of like my favorite podcasters, dude. You are doing some awesome stuff, my man.
I greatly appreciate that. Thank you, Adam. I'm glad to be here on your platform. This is my first time being invited to someone else's platform, and I'm honored and I'm thrilled, man. I'm super excited.
Dude, as am I. One of the, we were kind of talking off air, and I was just like, partly like I was kind of like weird on like having you on because I couldn't finish the last podcast episode. But then I was like, oh, why don't I just talk to him like that? But it was like almost like fanboy because I was like, and it was yeah. So yeah, man, you're doing great work, and then you're the Riz, Aaron Vincent says, yes.
What's
Thank
up,
you.
baby?
Yeah, man. Shout out to the Riz. And again, can't wait till he gets back on the interwebs with his podcast because the Riz is going to thrill us all. So can't wait. Can't wait.
Like
But dude,
that's one of those amazing friendships that is weird. That's the social media gives you that weird friendship because it's like I love that dude. You know what I mean? Like people don't realize like that dude has like done so much for me as far as support. And I'm like, and he just like knows me from Facebook. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, thank God for Facebook because it gives you hope in humanity because you meet people like Aaron Vincent and they're not a lot of them. But when you meet those people, it's like I do everything I can. I don't care what it is, whether it's Chad, you know what I'm saying? I'm gonna share his stuff, make sure that he knows that he's loved and cared about because he's an awesome dude, man. And he has inspired me to just be a better human being.
I agree. Yeah, I'm going to go on record. I love Aaron Vincent. I first, and that was the same deal, So I interviewed the Puerto Rican hitman Brandon Santana a couple years back.
Nice.
In his, I believe it was his Walkout FC title fight, or right before it,
Mm-hmm.
and obviously the voice of Walkout FC is one Aaron the Riz Vincent, right? So
Correct.
that's how it was, and it's just like, yeah, I love that dude too, man. And he's sent people my way. Hopefully, I can do the same with him. But like, yeah, it's just social media gets like this bad rap right now because
Mm-hmm.
everything. I mean, all media kind of gets this bad rap and what have you with all of the weird kind of tumultuous times that we're in
Yep.
right now. But it's
Yep.
just like when you find like your niche, when you find your people, it's just like
Yep.
damn it, it's the best thing ever.
Yeah, I totally agree 100%, man. And it's like, oh, that's what it's for. You know what I mean? All this other garbage and hoopla, you know what I'm saying? That's just background noise. It's really about locking in with people who you wouldn't otherwise be able to converse with because we live on opposite sides of the country.
Yeah, no, 100%. And Jesse Velasquez, who's an IFS champion here in Southern California, says big fats because he's good friends with some people I've never met in person. I just send them memes or FaceTime with him, and that's kind of how it is.
Yeah.
So it's all the craziness that kind of gets inundated with your day-to-day living and the inclusion of social media, but it's just like you can use it for just to kind of antagonize each other and who
Right.
you vote for or what you believe and all that whatever, or you can be like, hey, you're cool, I'm cool, let's be cool together. And
Right.
you know
Right. I totally agree. That's awesome. But
absolutely,
so
man.
so what are we gonna talk about, man? I'm
Oh,
I'm
there's this
like one of the most, eclectic people, you know what I'm saying? It's like it doesn't matter whether we're talking about country music, MMA, like I'm all over the spectrum.
I got Lenny. If you know Lenny Kravitz, we can talk about that.
Lenny.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm kind of on the other side of the spectrum. One would even argue the autistic spectrum. But yeah, well, I digress. But with
Yeah.
that, with that all being said, I mean, you're there's easier ways to make a living, right? So mixed martial arts. When did that come into your life?
Um, I hope you got time. I'm gonna make
Yeah.
a long story
First,
semi-short.
okay.
But let me start by saying this because it's a very important part of my story. I started out as a nerd and I didn't want to be a nerd. So I like kind of like you know how they talk about Tupac and Juice? He like got stuck in the character of Bishop and Juice. So I did that. I created this persona of the street guy. And then somehow or another, I got stuck in that character and I wound up in jail. And I wound up in jail a couple of times, arrested and all kinds of crazy stuff. And before long, I was no longer a nerd. I was a stone cold street dude. And it's all fun and games until you're in the back of a squad car on your way downtown. And it was like, hey, wait, guys, I wasn't like serious. You know, it was like playing thug, not like a real one, you know. And I wound up in jail. And I boxed growing up a little bit, but I was in my knucklehead phase. So I was like running the streets, or I was in trouble in jail or something like that. And I never got a chance to fight in the Golden Gloves. And my first smoker, I fought a kid. I was 100 and I think 62 pounds, and I fought a kid who was like 189 pounds. And it was his first fight, my first fight. Coach was like, screw it, let him go. You know what I mean? And this guy was big, real big, and I beat him. And after that, they wasn't putting a 160-pound kid in the ring. They was like, no, we'll see him at Golden Gloves. We ain't messing with him right now. We'll fight him when we got to. Because I was just real tough. That kid should have killed me. And I probably still got a little bit of brain damage from that altercation with that very big dude. But so I went to jail and I did some time in jail. When I got out, I got involved in the drug and rehab program in jail called SATP. And I went through that 6-month program and I earned the trust of the counselors. And they started training me as an inmate counselor. And I started working with other inmates while I was incarcerated who battled the disease of addiction. And so those people put me in touch with some good people in Pine Bluff, Arkansas, who ran a rehab, Covenant Recovery Center. And they allowed me to parole there. And I was talking to the center director one day, and he was like, hey, man, you know, tell me some things that you want to do. And I was a little ashamed because I was older. At this point, I think I was 29 going on 30. And I was like, oh, you know, this sounds weird. It may sound weird to you, but I want to try to box because, you know, I used to have some talent back in the day, but I was a knucklehead and I never got a chance to fight in the Golden Gloves. So it was a bucket list thing. Like, I want to do that. I don't want to be 80 and say, oh, I could have did this, should have did that. I want to do it. And he was like, that ain't crazy. I used to box back in the day. And he's like, show me that you're committed to this. And I was smoking cigarettes at the time. He was like, quit smoking. And after you've been smoke free for 30 days, we'll find a gym. And I said, cool. I gave him my cigarettes and my lighter right then on the spot, cold turkey. And he started letting me go running in the morning. And we eventually found a gym, the Pine Bluff Boxing Club, which was almost non-existent. There were like 2 or 3 people in there just kind of like punching around on bags and stuff. And I pretty much trained myself. And the Golden Gloves came around and I fought in the Golden Gloves. And I'm 10 years older at least than most of these guys that I'm fighting. I had no intentions of winning. I just wanted to be able to say that I did it. And I won the Arkansas State Golden Gloves tournament. And I was like, oh, wow, yay. So they're like, hey, man, you got to fight in the regional Golden Gloves. And I'm like, okay, one of these young kids from Tennessee or Louisiana is going to knock me out. No problem. So I go fight in the regional Golden Gloves and I win. And so now they're like, hey, you got to go fight in the national tournament. You got to represent the Mid-South as the 78-pound champion in the Tournament of Champions. And I was like, so now I'm scared because I'm like, oh, God, These are the best guys in the country. And we're at Salt Lake City, Utah, at the Salt Palace. And I was like, I mean, just drinking it all in. There's like 3 rings, action going on at all times. Oh, knockout over here. Oh, this kid passed out, like, and so I meet a guy named Anthony Tucker at Straight Right Boxing. And when I tell you these are the best people in the business in the state of Arkansas, they're magnificent people. And I met Anthony Tucker and we were having a conversation. He was like, so how many fights have you had? And I was like, 6. And he was like, 600? And I was like, no, 6. He's like, 60? And I was like, no, 6. Like, tonight will be my 7th fight. He's like, how did you get here? I beat guys that had like 150, 200 fights, you know what I mean? And I was just had basically a shotgun and a grenade, it was like left, right, left, right, left, right, and I didn't really have a lot of craft. I had some things that I remembered from when I was a kid, but basically I just, hard nosed it. And I went and a crazy thing happened. I got on the big stage and I got stage fright. Like I was standing there like this. I was like, and the bell had rung and everything. I just stood there and the guy just starts wailing on me. I got a standing 8 count. I snapped out of it, went on to have a good fight, really close fight. I lost a split decision in the national tournament. And those guys at Straight Right gave me their card and said, here, man, here's my card. Look me up if you're ever in Little Rock. 6 or 8 months later, me and my wife relocated to Little Rock and I looked them up and I started training with those guys. And I met Ashton Kirby, who's the son and the most phenomenal 150-pound, 5-pound fighter in the world. I'm standing on that. But I met him. He was cross training over there. He did MMA. And of course, I watched MMA. I love everything fighting. So I meet him. And then I was working with a guy named Paul Belafonte at a warehouse out in Southwest Little Rock. I was working with him and he's like, hey, I train at Rock City MMA. And if you know Paul does not look like a fighter. He's like, I was like, oh, okay, buddy, whatever. Well, you should come hang out with us. And I was like, I don't want to hang out wherever you hang out. And now I love Paul. Paul's vicious. He's like the smallest, nicest, little dangerous person you ever want to meet. And I said, okay, I'll come hang out with you guys. And I came for a 2-week tryout and I got bit by the MMA bug. And I was like, I love you guys, but I want to do this. And yeah, and I got under the tutelage of Nathan Kirby, and he's just one of the greatest, most genuine people that you ever want to meet. And he's a giant. And it's crazy because he doesn't know he's that big, but he's like 6'5", 6'6", like 270. He's a giant of a guy. And but he has this warmth about him that just brings you in, just draws you in. And you hate to tell him bad news. It's like going up to your dad. You're like, hey, Kirby, like I tore my shoulder and I didn't want to tell him, but I couldn't use it. I was like, it's all like limp. And I'm like, hey, coach, I can't move my arm. But so I went on to start training MMA. And I think after 6 months, I wanted to have at least 6 months of training before I had my first fight because I respect the craft so much. I was like, there's no way I'm going to just, because I can box, I'm going to jump in here with these guys and do what they do. Like the first time Trevor Olison kicked me in the mouth, my first day in the gym, and like the pad of his foot, like swiped my mouth. I was like, oh, wow, that was so disrespectful. It was like the worst feeling ever. So I was like, I got to figure that out. I got to learn that. And I love the progression of my mixed martial arts career. Like I could see where I was at, just a boxer in the ring with these guys trying to figure it out, to where my last fight with Nathan Mitchell, it was like, these are 2 mixed martial artists, like I was like super proud of that. It didn't look like a boxer and a kickboxer. It looks like 2 mixed martial artists who are getting it on. And that's pretty much been my journey. And it all started with just wanting to do something different with my life. It was like, it started as a bucket list thing, and podcasting to me, I've always been a talker. I actually went to college for broadcast journalism. But while I was in college, I started becoming the Black Stifler. And I was like already, I didn't go to college right out of school. So I was like already a few years older than the people I went to school with. So I was like, I got my own place, party at my house kind of situation. So it was like, it was more party and less college. And of course, I flunked out. So I didn't really get to do that. And once I got my life together as far as the street stuff and all that kind of craziness, I just started one by one, like living my dreams. It was like I wanted to do that, and now I want to do this, and it's like I want to do stand-up comedy. And I'm like, I'm writing jokes, and I'm gonna take it serious. I don't want to do the Instagram thing. No disrespect to anybody who made their bones on Instagram, but I want to do the traditional route, go to some of the nightclubs and do stand-up comedy. I've done one at an almost open mic night, and I was so nervous. I'd rather get in the cage with two guys than to stand up and try to make people laugh.
No,
And I'm sorry if I
100%.
took up a whole bunch of your time. Go ahead,
No,
Adam.
no, I love it. I love it. And going back to, the street life and then going to, jail and what have you, a lot of people in that kind of system, part of the reasons why they go back, most people kind of, whether it be friends, family, spouses, whatever, they're so quick to write these people off, but we're falling back into their old habits. But, when you can't vote, when you can't, you know, work certain jobs and whatever, it's almost like we here in America are probably one of the only civilized nations that we don't rehab our criminals. Now, obviously, the crazy ones, there's that, right? But
Right.
like nonviolent drug offenses or what have you, and there's people now. I mean, it almost breaks my heart when I think about like weed being legal in most of the union, and guys and gals that are locked up for like 30 years plus still, when people are getting pardoned and everything like that for
Yep.
worse stuff. And it's just like, but the thing about it is you found something. I mean, you had it in you, but you had
Yeah.
people to kind of, or at least the self-worth, after all of the reasons why you could have kind of been disheveled, as and I'm not just talking about like physically, but like your soul is disheveled, the things that you saw
Right.
there and what have you. But you had this dream and you're like, I'm gonna see if I can take it. And I mean, not only did you do it, but I mean, you were a factor. You went to nationals. Like, who can say that? That's amazing. And yeah, I agree 100%. My brother, the legend, Mr. Wade, absolutely, Aaron Vincent, and he said, "Let's talk about your comedy ventures." And we were kind of alluding to that. And
Yeah.
John Parker, a guest on According to Woods, pro wrestler and MMA fighter, says salute, much respect. So there's that. But yeah, I mean, the fact that you had that resolve, that wherewithal, that you're like, hey, there's something beyond what I'm just doing right now or
Right.
my particular circumstance. And I think it's absolutely pivotal, that journey happens, because I mean, that's the similar journey that most people are on right now in 2020. Their health is, in a precarious position, their livelihoods are in precarious positions or whatever,
Yeah.
and people are
Yep.
figuring out like, hey, the thing that I did for 2, 4, 10, 20, 30 years, guess what, that's no more. It's
Yep.
finito. So I love that you did it, and then you did it to the highest degree on your own merit, just stuff
Yeah.
that you kind of remembered from a time going by. That's
Yeah.
incredible.
Yeah. It was an amazing experience, and people always ask me like, why? I was like, well, I feel like once upon a time, way back in the day, like they said you couldn't run a mile in under 4 minutes. And then when that first guy did it, then you looked at next year and there was like 1,000 people that had done it. And I say that to say this: when people, I did what I've done for my kids because I want my kid. My wife thinks I'm crazy, but I said I'm gonna get a curio and I'm gonna start, the Wade wall. It's like here, and I'm gonna put my trophies in there because let me show you what I did as an ex knucklehead, ex street dude. And you know what I'm saying? Like, let me show you what I did. Now, if I could do that, you can do way more. But I told my wife, I said, I want to set the bar as high as I can get it because if they see it, then they know that it's possible. Well, my dad did it. My dad got out of jail and my dad got his life together and my dad did X, Y, and Z. I haven't gone to jail. I haven't had to live in the streets. And so I know I could beat him. And that's what I tell my son all the time. Hey, don't let an ex-con beat you, dude. Don't let an ex-con, you got to beat me. You have got to beat me. And I try to encourage my kids that way so I can show them, look, dude, I know you can do better than that. And I don't care. It doesn't have to be boxing or MMA. You can build model cars, or you can, you know what I'm saying, do ballet, whatever it is. I want you to rock it to the best of your abilities. You know what I mean? That's what I want to put that in you, that it's like I tell my son and I tell my daughter, it's a mindset. It is a mindset. And here's where I get the nerd on at, because even though God put a certain group of highly influential people in my life, Harry Potter was pivotal in my life. I was in jail, and a guy he had guys in jail. They don't have weights anymore in Arkansas. So guys like fill laundry bags with books, and they will like lift a bunch of books. And he had like the first 4 Harry Potter books. And I hadn't read Harry Potter because my mom was an uber Christian. And so you ain't gonna read them demons up in here. So I wasn't allowed, right? I wasn't allowed to read Harry Potter. But I'm so glad that I found Harry Potter at 28 years old, because it was the second book, The Chamber of Secrets. At the end of the book, Dumbledore says to Harry, yeah, you could have went to Slytherin and you could have done this and you could have gone bad, but it's not about the attributes that you possess. It's about the choices that you make. And it blew me away. And I remember sitting in my jail cell reading that book, and I was like, that was pretty cool, man. That was pretty cool what he said. But I learned right there, was like, wait, if you want to do different things, you got to do different things. So it was like, you have to practice making good choices. Not that I got it all figured out and I make great choices, you know, because I still spend more money than I should on bullcrap. But I don't make the kind of choices that put me in a situation where my freedom can be taken away from me and my children. You know, and it's like, if there's there's some guys, it was Harry Potter for me. And then that was the impetus to me getting to being a better person and doing better things. And now I'm hardcore, so it's like C.T. Fletcher, you know.
Yes,
I love C.T. Fletcher, man.
Oh, he's a great guy. So you're familiar with the McKees, Antonio and AJ, right? AJ fights in Bellator. Antonio,
yes.
Yeah. So they are involved with amateur promotion out here in actually Long Beach, and
Wow.
and I think it was like weigh-ins for that amateur show, same day weigh-ins and whatever, and I could just hear the voice, and I'm like, that's C.T. Fletcher.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and he is just as motivating. He's incredible. Like that dude is. And I mean, as to it, you know, Antonio and AJ McKee. I mean, there's a litany of. I mean, in one cap, you've got like Joey Davis, AJ McKee, Antonio, who can still go. I mean, he just fought like a year ago. You've got Chris McCain, former football player turned mixed martial artist. You know, fights for lights out extreme fighting. So it's just like. You know, there's a close knit group, you know, and then just knowing like C.T. Fletcher is kind of in there, and even the promotion, it takes place at the Metroflex, which is a like a hardcore bodybuilder weightlifter gym and whatever, and there's just a cage set up right in the middle of it. It's just amazing.
Awesome.
You know? Yeah. And Joey the Bull says, I do stand up and also went to nationals, but for hot dog eating contests. There you go. There you go. And you can
let me tell you, that's a skill. That's a skill, man. You think you can eat a bunch of hot dogs until you, goodness gracious.
Absolutely. And you can actually check out Joey the Bull as one half of the Gym Crashers podcast on Free Admission Media on both Facebook and YouTube. So they have Jennifer Diedrich, who is competing at Submission on the Shore, which is an all-female submission-only jiu-jitsu tournament, Nogi and Nogi. That's happening this very weekend. I believe it's Friday and Saturday. So check Jennifer Diedrich out on the Gym Crashers. So there's the plug. There's the plug. But I mean, Jesse Velasquez saying adversity will show you what you're really made of, and respect for getting through it. Um, and you're setting a legacy for future generations. Absolutely. And
Yeah.
it's not just your kids, right? You've got nieces and nephews. You've got
Right.
your kids' friends that might come over to the house to watch a Harry Potter or what have you. And they all, and and we go with like kids, but I mean, just people in your community that are seeing you,
Sure.
being able to manage a full-time job and then
Yeah.
a full-time family and then full-time fighter. Like, how can you have three full-time jobs at one time? I don't
Right.
know, but you seem to be doing it. And then, if that wasn't crazy enough, a podcaster. So
Yeah.
I think it's awesome, man.
Well, I mentioned it on my podcast, and I'm gonna say it to you like I'm hanging up my gloves, and people ask me why. I said, well, I'm just tired of letting these young guys hit me in the face. Nathan Mitchell probably gave me the best black eye I've ever had in the history of my life, and but
Which
I
is something to be said because, I mean, you get
no, it was
blacker
nice.
than an eye that we already have. That's
Right.
tremendous.
No, it was nice. Like it was closed. It was like big. I saw pictures and I was like, oh my God. Yeah, it was brutal. It was brutal, but it was a great fight. And it's just, I feel like I'm going to the next phase in my life. And plus, I'm an Aquarius, you know what I mean? So I'm like all over the place anyway. And I'm like trying to focus on things. Like I started a t-shirt company. I actually made this shirt that I'm wearing, the hashtag entanglement t-shirt. So, so like I actually made that shirt. And so I'm getting that together, and I've been doing some shirts and stuff for fighters. I sent my boy Aaron Vincent some off the cuff because that's my guy, that's my G man. I'm telling you, everything that I do, I'm gonna make sure that guy's involved in it. I'm like kind of like riding on his coattails a little bit. Hold on, let me go too, Aaron.
Yeah,
So,
man.
but no, all jokes aside, like he showed me what networking is. He plugged me in with BGE, you know what I mean? And had them as guests on my podcast, and I got to talk to them. And now I know where some good music is because those guys are talented and they do make good music. So it's like this web of connections that are forming. You know what I mean? Like you, I don't even know. Look, I don't even know how we even started talking. I think I said something or something like that on a
Oh yeah,
post, and
you
it
said
was
something
like,
on Aaron's page, and I was like, oh, and no, something about like podcasting, blah blah blah, and then I was like, hey, you want to be on my podcast? And that,
right.
yeah, that was it. But I mean, again, that's Aaron Vincent, kind of
Yeah.
putting things in motion. So again, I mean, I can't thank him enough. And Jesse is saying, fictional characters can have more of an effect on you than real people. His was Goku, Son Goku from Dragon Ball Z.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
that.
No, I
So I
totally
mean,
get that, man.
mine was Bret the Hitman Hart. I mean,
Oh
I
my God.
attribute.
Stop it.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
That's my favorite wrestler. Bret the Hitman Hart was just like, I thought he was just like the best. It
He,
was him and Shawn Michaels. Like growing up, like they were I wanted a mullet. You know, I wanted a mullet because of Shawn Michaels.
yeah. No, it's crazy. So I mean, when I was two. We were living in San Francisco. My dad was a street performer. He played contemporary jazz music at Fisherman's Wharf in San Francisco.
Nice.
But he would, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, those were tourist days. So he'd be at work. And I remember, well, I was told to me by my mom that there was one particular weekend where he was like a Saturday where he wasn't, he was working essentially. So it was me and her. I think I might have been two, right? And she had just put me to sleep as a toddler, tearing up the house, had just put me to sleep. And we were living in a Victorian apartment. So we'd have our apartment here, and then in the basement almost would be the laundromat. She was like, hey, the baby's asleep. This is like 87 when you could still do these things, right? And not
Right.
catch a CPS rap and whatever. But like everything's good. Leave the baby. Let me go do laundry and whatever, right? But I must have heard the door slam or something or other. But I just like I cried like a banshee. The neighbors went ahead and got mom. And even mom scooped me up. I remember that scooped me up. I was still just wailing my head off, right? And um, she was like, "Oh, it's Saturday, the cartoons, right?" Not realizing it's Saturday night, So she's flipping the channels and whatever, and then I stopped crying. That was Saturday night's main event, August of '87, and it was Bret Hart with one half of the Hart Foundation when he was still a
Right.
heel with Kim the Anvil and Bobby Heenan, or not Bobby Heenan, Jimmy Hart, and I think there was
Jimmy.
another run-in too, but they worked over one Macho Man Randy Savage's leg, and oh my God, I can call the match in my head. It's
That's
just it went
amazing.
through like two commercial breaks or whatever, but if not for Bret Hart and Randy Savage, I don't think I would be involved in any form of combat sports because after seeing that, I remember I kind of liked Popeye, was into Ninja Turtles and whatever, but like everything took a second fiddle to anything that happened in a ring and later a cage because of Bret and Macho. These
Right.
are cartoons come to life. That pink and black of Bret Hart and the Hart Foundation. Anvil. He threw anvils. I would see Wile E. Coyote.
Right.
Essentially
Right.
throw anvils at the Roadrunner, and this dude could literally throw an anvil across the damn yard and whatever. And I mean, if you've got Bret, you've got Anvil, then you find out like the British Bulldogs are part of the family,
Right.
and
Exactly.
then later on Brian Pillman, and then Owen, like,
Owen. Yeah, that's what I was
oh my,
gonna say.
that's my son's name. That's how big of an effect. My son's name is Owen. Owen J.
Really?
Yeah,
Oh, that
100%.
is awesome. That
Yeah,
is
I
totally
can't believe
awesome.
my wife allowed it. So it's cool. But I mean, again, if not for that, I wouldn't have been into, Julio Cesar Chavez and Mike Tyson later or Tommy
Right.
Hearn because they fought in the ring just like Bret and Macho did. And
Right.
when you think about, oh my gosh, Stu Hart lived in a place called Canada, didn't know that he lived in a big old house and his basement where he would literally stretch football players, basketball players, and even one time of the year during the Calgary Stampede, a wrestling bear. So Wile
Oh,
Coyote and all
wow.
it paled into comparison because I wanted to do the thing that needed a person with arms, head, whatever can choke out a bear. So
Right.
that's
Right.
that. So yeah, man, that's a pivotal deal. And then later, when Dan Severn comes to the WWF in 96, 97, and he starts
Mhm.
ragdoll Owen and everything that I knew about wrestling, like I knew there was like there's some showman aspect of it, but like the Hearts and all of the people that came out of Calgary, those were real. So you've got
Yeah.
Owen, who's the best of them all, right? The high flyer and the technical stuff that Bret does, and then
Hmm.
he gets ragdolled by the Beast. I was just like, what? What are you doing? What is this? UFC? What? Yeah. So yeah,
Yep.
kind of a fan. Kind of a fan.
Yeah, totally. I see that. Well, no, yeah, because I was like, I had a problem with Shawn Michaels. I remember having a serious beef with Shawn Michaels because if you remember, he had the girl with him, Sensational Sherry.
Yes.
And who was it? Was it Ravishing Rick Rude? It was one of those guys that because he used to have that big old mirror that was like a heart. And he
Yeah.
whacked and he went to hit Shawn Michaels with it, I think, and he had moved out of the way and it hit Sherry. And it
Sherry.
was like,
Yes.
yeah, and after that, it was like, man, forget Shawn Michaels. So I
Yeah.
think Shawn Michaels, I was an adult when I forgave Shawn Michaels for that.
Oh yeah. It wasn't until let's see. Actually, you remember when they would pose and Kurt Angle during the him and Shawn feud leading up to
Uh,
WrestleMania, he kind of spoofed it. But if you remember, he he would throw Sherry like when he would do his pose, he would throw Sherry down, and then she would
right,
just
right.
like right. And I mean, there are times that you could see whether it be your household or other households, like some domestic violence stuff, and
Yeah.
like even as a kid, you're like, hmm. So when
And
Shawn
even
Michaels
being
was
a
doing that,
dramatization like that,
yes,
today he would be totally canceled. He would be
I don't
canceled.
even. well, actually, I did watch WrestleMania 9. They do no on WrestleMania 9. They didn't. Sherry came out, but she didn't
Hmm.
come out with him. He came out with Luna. He came out
Oh,
with Luna Vachon against Tito Santana, I believe it was. I forgot. No, Tatanka. He came
oh,
out with, yeah, and
hey,
then
you going back now to Tonka?
yeah.
Oh man, dude, that
Oh
everybody.
man.
It seems like everybody was a superstar back then, though. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like you had
Yes.
to be great because you were around so many great people. Like I mean, and that's the same for MMA. That's the same
Yeah.
for boxing. It was like, man, to be Sugar Ray Leonard, or to be Tommy Hearns, to be Roberto Duran, it was like, look who you were fighting, and that's not to take anything away from what the sports are today, but I'm
Today,
just saying,
right?
like, it was star-studded back then. It was so difficult. Like, there's hundreds of guys that we don't remember their name unless you're just like a Uber, like follower of the sport and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But those names, those are gods, like Durant.
Transcends.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure.
And it's funny because like if you watch the Last Dance documentary, you see like Jordan, right? And then but look, it wasn't just like Jordan. You had like Charles Barkley, you had Larry Bird, you
Yep,
had Magic
yep,
Johnson, like all of these players, right? And then you float over to, even hockey. You had like Bobby Orr and Wayne
right.
Gretzky.
Wayne
You go to
Gretzky.
baseball, like there was like every sport had their like proverbial like I would say like crossing the pop culture lexicon
Right,
icons, right? Where you
right.
didn't have to, know what the sport is. You didn't know what that entertainment aspect of it is. You just knew the person. You knew Michael Jordan did that. You knew Hulk Hogan did wrestling. You knew Wayne
Totally.
Gretzky did hockey, and that all happened in the same time frame, like in the same cinematic universe, so to speak.
Yeah.
If you're a kid of the '80s, '90s.
Yeah, totally. I had a Gretzky jersey. You know what I mean? And I have never seen hockey. It was a Gretzky jersey. Why wouldn't you wear a Gretzky jersey? I had King Griffey Jr. You know what I mean? Like I remember
Yeah,
he had his shoes. I had a pair of Griffeys, and it was like, why? I'm not a baseball guy, but why wouldn't you get a pair of Griffeys? Like so. Yeah, I totally understand what you're saying. Like,
yeah,
yeah, that was a
yeah.
great
No,
era.
but we grew up in a great era,
Yeah, for sure.
But the crazy thing, right? So, of all of these sentimental figures, right? And then at this point, you had your run in with the law. Then I mean, you got to talk to me about the, the not the arena, but like the mental aspect of like where you were. Like you had almost a canary in the coal mine, and like I want to compete. If I ever get out of this, like I wanted to compete for Golden Globes, right?
Okay.
And now you're here, right? Like,
Mhm.
did you realize the importance of it at the time?
No, I didn't. Because I remember somebody after I won the Golden Gloves. I remember somebody who remained nameless because they were one of the naysayers. They were like, "Oh, well, nobody thought you were even gonna win." And I remember not having any ego about it either. I remember I was like, I didn't either. I was like, I didn't think I was either. It was like a real Cinderella kind of moment. You know what I mean? For me, because I was like, I had no intentions of winning. I didn't. I was like, I just want to be able to say I did it. And it was like I hear people talk about like not Master P, but Dr. Dre, like when he was making the Chronic. Did you know you're making something iconic? And it was like, well, no, I was making it. It's like, did you know that this was going to be that? And it was like, no, I was just like I said, I wanted to do that. It was like I said, a bucket list thing, and then it just spiraled into all these connections that I have with people from the boxing world and from MMA. And I remember asking God, I was like, God, I just want to know some good people, and God has blessed me to meet good people. And we meet ever so often and sock each other in the face, but they're like just great people. And I know that some of the super Christian people and the super church people. I have a friend, I won't say his name because I don't want to be putting his business out like that. But I know some of my friends who are in the church, and they get these super Christians who tell them you shouldn't be doing that. It's barbaric. And then I share my story with them. Man, putting these gloves on saved my life. You know, it saved my life, and it essentially gave me and my family a quality of living because it did something on the positive side of things for my mental. You know what I mean? Because I hope that the feminists don't beat me up for this. I just believe in the traditional structure of a family, to where if dad, who's the head of the household, his mental is off balance, then what does that do for mom? What does that do for the kids? What does that do for our finances? You know, and for me, boxing, mixed martial arts, and the whole lifestyle has been integral to my recovery, to my staying free, to my staying pro-social and positive. And like I said, and now I'm transcending that. Not to say I always said I won't fight one of those trash talking dudes. I've told coach that, like, those guys that talk trash, yeah, homeboy, it's gonna be a grudge match. I'm gonna bust you. I'm not, take me off the card. I don't want to be associated with people like that, because I lived a long time being angry. I lived a long time being violent without a cause. I'm not gonna live like that. I'm not gonna be around that type of energy. I'm not gonna be associated with anyone who wants to portray that image or put that energy out. I refuse to do it, because listen, homie, I don't promote that lifestyle, and I don't promote that energy, but I was really living that. And I was really living that. So I have the t-shirt, it's in the Goodwill somewhere. I don't want to relive and rekindle any of that energy, because I remember how nasty that feels, and that foul taste in your mouth doing these things and conducting yourself that way. For people like me, I understand that that rabbit hole is a slippery slope, and before you know it, homie, you will be sliding down that joker, and you will be in a county jail somewhere saying, what happened? So quickly. And for me, I'll tell you this, I'll share this with you. When people
Yes.
say, well, at what point did you say, okay, you knew you were a fronter, you knew you were out here fronting? But I'll tell you something like this: I always had the ability to fight. And street guys respect a person who can fight. So I would, even though I've never tried to talk gangster, I've always spoken this way. And it's very difficult to be a street dude who uses this type of vernacular and who has this type of voice. So there was always an opportunity for me to show people that I could fight. Because why wouldn't a street dude say something sideways to me speaking like this in a street setting? Oh, I look like the guy who gets slapped in that situation. I look like the guy who gets his ass kicked. And I'm aware of that. And so that would be how, like, I would, earn my bones, is by putting myself in these situations. And then it's like, oh man, yeah, but he can fight though. I know he kind of acts like a white boy, but man, he can fight, because that was always the thing. Like, oh man, old white acting dude. And that was one of the deals. And people would say, well, why didn't you just get out of it? And it was like, well, I had to always, well, you get a reputation, and that reputation is addictive. And now it's no longer I do things because for shock value, but I have to maintain the rep. And I thank God that I went to jail. And I thank God that the people in the streets, and this is no shade, but the people in the streets that say, we're going to do this for you in jail, we're going to do that for you in jail, they don't. And I appreciate them for not doing that, because now I don't have a reason to be loyal to people who are still in the streets. I kind of changed that energy around, because at first I was angry, like, oh man, this guy should be doing this and this guy should be doing that. And they didn't. And that's okay. That's okay, because I have no reason to be loyal to you. And now that was the stepping stone that I needed to propel me into where I am today, doing all these things that I wanted to do and I didn't have the courage to do because it wasn't cool. I remember getting laughed at the first time I wore a pair of DCs to school. I went to a predominantly black school in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And I was like, these are like $80, I was like, these are name brand shoes, man. And then like, I got laughed out of the cafeteria. So, it's like, so for me, it was like, I learned early on that being a nerd ain't cool. That's why I embrace it as the angry nerd today, because I don't care whether you like me or not. I know who I am, and I know where I'm going. I do know where I'm going. I have a direction, and I have a plan. And I'm not super religious, but I do believe in God. And I'm telling you, God is good, or whoever you believe in is good. The people, if you believe in a higher power, that higher power is good. And I'm not perfect. All I'm saying is that if you put one foot in front of the other, trying to be a better person and trying to be a righteous person, the God that I believe in is going to work to help you. That God is going to work to help you. And I had to learn about God for myself. And I did it through Harry Potter. I always come back to Harry. I got and people think that's funny. And I'm like, I'm serious, man. I read the Bible from cover to cover, never shed a tear. Harry Potter has brought me to tears on several occasions, and I kid you not. And but the God that I believe in knows how to speak to your soul. And for me, it was Harry Potter. All I say to people is be receptive, because you never know when you're having one of those God moments and God is showing you what path that you need to go down. And I feel like that with now I'm not fighting anymore. Now I feel like that with podcasting, and I feel like that with my t-shirt business. And I'm sure God's going to continue to use me and work with me in my t-shirt business and as well as podcasting. And what I've learned in my small time of podcasting is everybody isn't going to like everything. But if I feel like I'm being using my heart and speaking from my heart, because I want to speak from the heart. I feel like so much of social media and mainstream media, people never speak from the heart. They speak from the teleprompter
Yeah.
that was loaded with some rhetoric from whoever, and they speak that. And they rarely speak from the heart. I haven't seen that. The few people who I have seen speak from the heart in mainstream media are no longer in mainstream media. So I want to continue. And I was listening to the Joe Budden podcast, and I'm glad I caught that. He was talking about ownership, and he was talking about, having your own and building it from the ground up. And I appreciate hearing that podcast, because I'm like, okay, I felt like that was another God moment. You're on the right path, man. Stick with it. You got everybody who has something worth having had those humble beginnings. So I feel like I'm on the right path, man. And obviously, because I'm here with Adam Woods right now on his podcast, I feel super honored, man. Like I can't stop smiling. I'm a smiler anyway, but I just can't stop smiling because I'm so happy and excited to be here.
No, man, I'm excited for you and the path that you're on, and especially, we kind of share a similar path that we, especially being podcasters, and no disrespect to anybody that does it and doesn't have like that radio or broadcasting background, but for guys like us, when we were kind of coming up, you had to, go to intern at wherever the hell, like a converted barn of a studio and whatever. And I mean, I'm in LA. They were like shipping me off to like Mississippi and whatever. I'm like, wait, but I thought you said this was like the top market in whatever. It's like, yeah, it is, but you can't work here. Earn your keep, go whatever, and it's just like you had to literally intern for anywhere from 5 to 15 years to get like a 3 o'clock in the morning, like nobody listening slot. And the only reason why you got that is because, that incumbent DJ that had been on the radio for at that
Mm-hmm.
slot for 5, 10, 20 years, sometimes even 40 years at that same time slot. Well, they either had somebody in their family pass away, they had, like a divorce, some
Yep.
entanglement. Shout out to your shirt. Uh, some kind of like act of God or the devil or whatever you want to attribute it to. And it because radio time was so sacred, that you would like even still in like 2020 where it doesn't really matter. Anytime I hear dead air, it it makes me cringe. I go into full on anxiety mode because
Wow.
when I and this is just in the early 2000s, dead air was a $20,000 per second FCC fine. You know,
Wow.
yeah, so that's so, but it's with all of that, you kind of appreciate this time where like I don't have to have a studio, or my studio, much like yours, is in the corner of our respective houses, or
Right.
in your illustrious intro to the Angry Nerd podcast, literally out of your mom's basement.
Right.
Uh, so it's it's amazing, And again, I mean, that isn't a prerequisite, right? Because Rogan just went live with Adam Curry, and I think it's still maybe going on, but in his new studio in Austin and what have you, and kind of almost
Nice.
bearing Adam Curry being one of the first podcasters and whatever. And Adam Curry, had his run as a DJ on MTV. Yeah, MTV had DJ skits. Yeah, I know it seems
Right,
weird.
right.
Yeah, I know it
That's
seems weird.
hilarious.
Yeah,
You're like, when did MTV have DJs? What's he talking
yeah,
about?
yeah, exactly. Oh no, I showed my kid because if you want to hear some like woke shit or see some woke shit, Josie and the Pussycats.
Really?
Josie and the Pussycats. That is
I
like
gotta
one of
check
the
that
most
out. Let me
like
write that down.
yes. So obviously it's kind of you know taken from the cartoon, those Harvey tunes, the Josie and the Pussycats and whatever, but they did a live action version in the I want to say like the late '90s, early 2000s with like
Uh-huh.
Rosario Dawson, Rachel Lee Cook, and Tara Reid. But there's a point at the time of filming, Tara Reid was dating Carson Daly and TRL, and not to give too much away, but there's that. And my kid looks at me and goes, "Why are they at that studio? Like, don't they have a studio in their house?" And I was like, "No,
Hilarious.
a long time ago, nobody had studios in their house, you know?"
Once upon a time in the world of broadcast television.
Yes, yes. But it's cool that you have that platform. I have a platform, and we can just talk, and not have to worry about what is said or pissing off sponsors. Well, pissing off sponsors, I mean that can
Right?
happen still.
Yeah,
But still,
totally.
but I mean, you can speak freely, and I mean, even
Sure.
Rogan, right? You're the Joe Budden. I'm all like the Joe Rogan, where
Yeah.
um,
And though,
you
and
know,
both of them are like titans. You know what I mean?
yeah,
In the they're like titans in the podcast world. So it's like, yeah. But
yeah,
to
and
your point that you were talking about like the studio and everything, like that's where that comes from for me, because I grew up in the era of this was recorded in front of a live studio audience. It
yeah,
was like, but who has a live studio audience in 106 in Park? You know what I mean? Like who does that anymore? It's like sitcoms you don't hear. You remember you could hear people laughing in a sitcom. You could hear people laughing and stuff,
yeah.
like when you're watching Family Matters or something like that. So yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That whole deal, but
Ooh,
yes, yes, and I
that's
mean,
funny.
if you've done any of those like extra whatever, I mean, literally, when they say like the red light glow on, that's not just the camera capturing the whole deal. It's literally like the applause side goes on, and you can applause or
Wow.
ooh, yeah, and it's just like it kind of feels contrived, but I mean,
Hmm.
but we had to kind of go in all of those iterations to kind of get here, right? Where we
Sure.
are. And in
Sure.
many, and it's funny because like Jim Cornette, right? He has this brilliant saying, and I love it. And it's if you haven't seen it, it's new to you, right? So
Right.
that's why
Right.
when like your kid is like, "Oh, Dad, look, it's a yo-yo," and
Hmm.
you're like, "Motherfucker, like I know what this is,"
Right.
like,
Like, hold
and
on, let me
even
show
like,
you. I can walk the dog. Eiffel Tower.
yes,
How about that?
right, right, and even
Yeah.
what we're doing now as podcasters, right? I mean, we're essentially doing what like the 1930s, 40s radio shows were doing before
Yeah.
TV. That's essentially what we're doing. Nobody knew there was no FCC then.
Right.
And then
Right.
once they figured out a way to make money, they did, and then the
Yeah.
regulations and all of that jazz or whatever, and it's kind of
Okay.
going
Don't get me talking about capitalism.
You know what this is. Bring it.
Right.
Don't sing it in
I,
the words of
that
Duran the
that's
Rock
that's
Johnson. Don't
it's
sing it. Bring it.
right, but that's just the thing. That's one of the things, the things that I really, really just dislike about our country is the fact that as soon as someone figures out, some Richie Poo figures out how to package it and sell it, all the value is gone. I mean, it's gone. It just doesn't mean like nothing really means anything. Like and I think it's because we just have access to so much and except capitalism, one of the byproducts of capitalism is excess, you know, and it's like our kids, like I was telling a friend of mine about this the other day. Like I bought my daughter a laptop for her birthday. And you know, and I gave it to her and I was like, here you go, you know, and I was like, happy birthday. And she was like, oh, cool, thanks. Really? You know, because like that laptop cost more than my first car, my first two cars actually. Together. Right. My mom wouldn't spend $90 on a pair of rollerblades. You know, I got like some of like the off-brand like rollerblades, inline roller skates, you know, in a gray box, you know, for $29.99. She's like,
Like rubber
you better
cheese.
skateboard with like the hard wheels with the little rubber.
Yes. Then you have to wet to make it softer in a little
Right?
bit.
You know exactly what I'm talking
Yes.
about. And I'm sitting here like, I was like, okay, let me have that back. All right, let's try
Yeah.
this again. You know, she's like, yeah, nice, you know, cool, thanks. You know, you want me to say it again? Thanks. And I'm like, I was telling my friend, I said, well, you know, I had to go back and I had to process it. I was like, wow, I've raised a really ungrateful little piece of shit for a daughter. And, and I'm she's 15, so she's weird anyway because she's 15. But I told my friend, I said, you know, what I realized is that I'm viewing the thing through my lens because I grew up, we didn't have everything. We, you know, sometimes there may have been one of the three major utilities cut off, you know, like I grew up, you know, in those situations where we didn't always have the best of stuff and we didn't always have what we needed, let alone those wants, you know. So I view it through that lens. And like I told my friend, I said, I started looking at it differently. I started looking at it as a sign, as a pride thing, because I'm like, my daughter doesn't know lack. You know, my kids don't know what it's like to be without. And I was like, that's really a pat on the back, you know, not that I'm the greatest parent and not, you know, to shit on my mom or anything like that. I would never do that because mom did the very best she could with where she was at, you know, financially and everything like that. So I would never diminish her role as a parent or anything like that. But me and my wife have put ourselves in a position, and include my ex-wife, because she does her best and does a good job too, just like we do, doing our best. But she hasn't felt the crunch, you know, of the struggle. And of course, those of us who've been through the struggle, we kind of champion the struggle because it's like we'll talk about syrup sandwiches and we'll talk about ketchup sandwiches and things like
Yeah.
that. And we kind of champion the struggle a little bit. And we don't realize that our kids are living in this world where we have access to a lot of things that our parents didn't have access to. You know, we have access to a different kind of money today. We have access to a different kind of financial situation all the way around the spectrum. And I expect that laptop to mean to my baby what it would have meant to a 15-year-old Arshion, you know, and that's just not, it's just not going to ever happen like that, you know. And that's one of the things that I'm like, damn you, capitalism, you know. For me, I'm like one of those, I don't wear a little tin hat, you know, a little tin foil hat, but I am an amateur conspiracy theorist, and all roads lead back to capitalism for me. I should have never read Emma Goldman's book. Should have
No,
never read all those anarchist books.
yeah, no. My dad was like super deep in the weeds, like David Icke and all that jazz. So, I mean,
Okay,
that's another story for another day, you know.
that's a whole
But
nother show.
Eric Vincent says, "Oh shucks, I'm just a regular guy, lucky enough to live in a world guys like y'all. No, we live in your world, Aaron. Thank you. You're
You're the
yes,
greatest.
we
No one
we
can
live
beat you.
literally and figuratively, like literally doing this podcast, if not for you, Aaron Vincent.
Facts.
Yeah, and
Facts.
he's and yes, pure growth, both royalty. Thank you, sir. Hopefully,
Thank you,
it's
sir.
Lord Stephen Regal, like royalty,
Right.
like you know. And Robert Simerson, the major domo of the free admission media conglomerate, asks what you think of Travis Scott's McDonald's meal because I don't know what the hell fucking Travis Scott or Wacky Flacky, whatever the fuck. I I mean, in many respects, my love for hip hop died with Biggie and Pac, right? I mean, and then there was like little flashes of glory, like
Yep.
DMX, like
Yep.
Flesh of My Flesh, Blood of My Blood is, I mean, right there with like the Beatles' White Album and
Yep.
Metallica Justice for All. Like it's right there. That uh,
Totally.
like if you listen to Slippin' and you
Hmm.
don't fucking cry, I question like
Yeah.
if you have a soul or not.
Yeah. It might be a sociopath if you don't shed a tear when you listen to Slip. Because I'm like, especially like we were talking about the struggle coming from like you may not identify directly with what he was going through, but it puts you like that's one of those songs that transports you to that place when you felt that way. That's one of those songs that you can feel like if you have any type of humanity, you feel that song. You know what I'm saying? Like I totally agree. Like if you don't like be like, hey, chill out, dog. You know, like I'm side
Yeah,
eyeing you. You're like side eyeing, like seriously.
yeah. The craziest thing. So I mean, I have two kind of like I guess personal contacts with DMX. Actually
Awesome.
three. So the first time my I went to at the Forum in LA, which I ended up graduating from because I went to Inglewood High. Um,
Nice.
it was I think it was the Family Values tour, and that was when Korn was like off, like Korn was off of it. They gave it to Limp Bizkit because they went ahead and did Ozfest,
Hmm.
right?
Yep.
So the A towns, like the Arrowhead Pond and what have you, or Madison Square Garden or whatever, the A towns would be, you know, um, basically as the opener, Exhibit as the
Hmm.
opener, Papa Roach as the co-main, and then you had obviously Limp Bizkit, right?
Right.
Well, the Forum was the B town, and I think we got a better bill because we had DMX, Godsmack, and Limp Bizkit. And that
Oh
actually
wow.
ended up being the show where Fred Durst, because they had this deal where it was almost like the Megazord or Optimus Prime, the stage, right? And
Hmm.
DJ Lethal was in the chest plate, and so was Sam
Oh
Otto, the
wow.
drummer. It was nuts, right? But that was the one where Fred Durst, like, he was so loaded that he ended up like tripping over some of the amps and everything like that. It was just
No,
absolutely.
you gotta go in there, mom. Okay.
Oh, talk about a running.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. You're fine. Anybody want to make a cameo?
No, that was my kid. He came in here and let me know that he went potty.
I was like, oh man, there's a run in, dude. This is, let's do that. No, but yeah, so DMX, that time, and that was actually the time because he did. Imagine fans of Godsmack and Limp Bizkit primarily, right? And
Right.
DMX still to this day he starts his shows with the Lord's Prayer. That went
Right.
over not so well in that audience
Right.
that support him so well, to the extent where he got like a chorus of boos and he threw the mic down and he just went off, like literally like
Wow.
8 minutes into the set, right? So, so there's that, all right. And then I actually was working at a FedEx office right by, funny enough, the Vivid building, but no relation. But yeah, but there's this place called Michelli's. It's a famous like Italian restaurant right by Universal Studios here, and I was like, I was walking home, and I was like, that dude looks like DMX, and then he kind of turned, and I was like, oh, it's DMX, right? And he had just gotten out of jail that one time, right, for impersonating the what is it, the
Yeah.
sheriff in Arizona
Uh,
and whatever, right? And I was like,
golly.
oh shit, this is
Cocaine's a hell
this
of a
is good,
drug.
right? And then I basically mustered every bit of like strength and like just try to be a G, like,
Right.
hey, would you take a picture? Like, you want to do a selfie? And it wasn't even like I think they had like a what is it, HTC Evo. So you didn't even have the selfie. You actually had to point it up
Like
like
turn
that.
it around.
Yeah. And then his manager is like, "No, I'll take it for you." And He literally sounds like that. He's like, yeah, I'll do it. I was like, all right, cool. And
That's
that's
awesome.
how I sounded to DMX. I was like, all right, cool. Right?
Right.
And then he's like, oh, if we're gonna do this, we got to do the Rough Rider sign. And I was like, oh shit, circa '98. Woo! Like, I had to. It was way back there. It was way back in the doldrums of my fucking mind. The space set, in between my ears, and I was like, 1, 2, I got it.
Awesome. That is
Yeah.
hilarious.
And then actually, funny enough, right before we went on, my buddy that I went to high school with, he's a member of the Rough Riders, like National Biker
Yeah.
Association. So he was actually a consigliere of DMX today. DMX did some sort of like outreach and whatever, and my boy was right there with like a full on Rough Rider jacket and all that
Oh,
jazz.
nice.
Yeah. So DMX. Maybe he'll do
That's
one
pretty
of our
awesome.
podcasts one day. We'll see. We'll
That would
see.
be excellent. Yeah, that's like, yeah, DMX is awesome, man. He's super cool.
Yeah, man. So I mean,
So what was the
uh,
whole thing with Travis Scott and the McDonald's meal?
so
I didn't read
apparently
anything about that.
the rapper guy Travis Scott, um,
Hmm.
he has a meal at McDonald's. Not so much a Happy Meal or anything like that, but they just
Hmm.
like they threw all this stuff together. They're like, man, we're in quarantine. We're not making that much money, so let's go to the black guy. That's yeah. So I mean, it's literally a quarter pound. Like the meal is like literally a quarter pounder of cheese with bacon strips. That's literally it, right? That's it. And then
What are
like,
they calling it?
huh?
What are they calling it?
No.
Is it the Scott?
Well, I
Is
mean,
it
if they had went
the
with
T
like
Scott?
watermelon juice, like or orange soda, that would have been fucked up. But it's a Sprite.
Come
It,
on.
it's a
Oh, okay. I
non-negotiable
thought you were
Sprite.
saying that they.
No,
I thought you were saying that they
no,
did have watermelon. Y'all been saying, oh.
no. But
Now I
but
know it's
here's
hard out there with the coronavirus and stuff, but come on, man. Not a watermelon drink with your man.
although a watermelon soda would be really good right now, but I
Yeah.
digress. Uh, but
Damn.
it, but it's funny because it's a non-negotiable drink. So you get that right, that burger. They just threw bacon on a quarter pounder and gave it to Travis Scott, right? And then it's a non-negotiable Sprite. Like if you get the Travis
Wow.
Scott, you can't get high C, whatever. But what does Sprite go with? From what I hear,
Oh,
is come with it.
okay. Okay. That is
Lean,
problematic. That's
lean.
problematic
Yes.
because you're low key promoting drug use. Low key. Because if I understand the right way, that's what a lot of these young men, and I'm not going to act totally innocent because I live in the mid South, and screw music is like in heavy rotation in my CD player. Yes, they still make CD players, but so I know what that means, so I'm not going to act like brand new to it. But for a food chain like McDonald's, like McDonald's and Walmart, I feel like that's who's going to take over the world. McDonald's and Walmart, for McDonald's to, be like slick endorsing a drink that we know these rappers use to as a conduit to get their drugs. Because
Yeah.
that's essentially what they do is they mix the codeine or lean, whatever you want to, I guess for the sanctity of the show, I will say lean. I will call it lean. Hold on, buddy. You picked this. Okay, go in there with mama. Thank you. For the sanctity of the show, we'll call it lean. We won't say the clinical name, but they put it in the Sprite. One of my favorite rappers, Zero, he talks about it all the time. Double cups. We know what the cups mean, and for them to attach it to the meal, that is ensuring that you get that drink. And that is, for me, that puts you one step closer if you're a person who goes out and gets the Mick Travis or the Mick Scott, whatever they're calling it, and you get that and you come back to the party. Well, you already have half of the ingredients to go ahead and get sauce. You know what I mean? To go ahead, well, go ahead and pour me some in. I got a Sprite anyway. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And someone
No,
may say,
absolutely.
okay, the angry nerd's reaching right there. But I'm saying, what is their motivation behind it? Coca-Cola is more American than Sprite. Coca-Cola, apple pie, the Dodgers, the Cowboys.
Yeah.
There's certain staples in this country that just
Yeah.
exude America. And Sprite ain't it. Sprite's not
Yeah.
it.
Now, Robert Simerson, he's giving us a bit of context, and thank you, Robert. Love you, miss you. And again, Gym Crashers tonight at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on both the Free Admission YouTube and Facebook pages. Bam, I got you. But he said he's the second person ever. The only other person to have a deal with McDonald's is Michael Jordan, right? And apparently, this Travis Scott person is sponsored by both Sprite and Fortnite. So there might be a tie in there. But even so, why would you be sponsored by, like, of all of the, like, what is it? Like, that'd be like, what is it? Takeshi. Uh, I don't
Oh
know.
Lord.
Like Rainbow. I don't know what the
Takashi
hell he
six
would.
nine.
Yeah, I don't know what he would be endorsing, but even still, like, he's endorsing it because he's got like not good stuff. Like
Yeah.
like Takeshi doing like walkie talkies,
Right.
like duh.
Hilarious. Is this thing on?
Yes.
Can y'all hear? Abracadabra.
Good. So I mean,
Abracadabra.
yeah,
You
I mean,
know?
there's definitely an implication somehow, some way, whether it be
Yeah.
kind of apparent or not. You sign a deal. Like, I mean, and again, I don't know anything about the. I mean, before this, I didn't know anything of Travis Scott. I was like, if you would have said Travis Scott, I was like, oh, like Jill Scott's brother, or you know, she's definitely the more talented Scott of the
Yeah.
pairing. So,
I
and then
know he's a rapper, but I'm not familiar with his music. Like my son is getting me familiar with some of the new rappers, NLE Choppa, and Dub Baby. Apparently, there's a Lil Baby, a Dub Baby, and there's another Baby. I think there's 3 versions of Baby out there. And now I can there's a distinction. I know there's a dark skin one and a light skin one with dreads. So I'm picking up on it, because I want to stay in the know, you know what I mean, about this stuff. So,
well,
and
theoretically
Little
speaking,
Baby, he has the song, kind of speaking out about the social injustices and things like that, which I thought was pretty cool. He knows he has a platform and he knows he has the young people's ear for him to do a song like that. I thought that was very responsible, and I thought it was very necessary as well. I know that there are people who say, "Oh, well, like, what was the woman's name who told LeBron James, shut up and dribble?" If you have a platform, and that's what they'll always say. Now, when one of these guys gets in trouble, they will enhance the crime or make an example of him because you're a role model. But I'm not a role model when it's time to speak out about something that's wrong. And getting back to Travis Scott, I feel like if that was the motivation behind attaching the Sprite to it, I think that he should be more responsible because he's in that world. I don't know if he gets down like that. I don't know enough about him to know that he's associated with that particular drug or anything like that. But he has to be socially aware that Sprite and lean just go hand in hand. If I go to the Quickie Mart and I pick up some backwoods, everybody in line behind me knows why I got those backwoods.
yes,
Because who just fires up a backwoods? Oh, this is my favorite cigar. Oh, backwoods. You're smoking a cigar. You ain't got backwoods. Stop. Or I don't know if they have them out there on the West Coast, but the other ones, the $2 for $1 ones, like the pom poms.
We don't have those. We definitely have backwoods, but I get what you're hitting. Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like everyone in the Quickie Mart knows exactly why I got that.
Right.
And there are a couple of people on your way out who go like, okay, I see you.
Where the party at?
Right. So that's what I'm saying is like he should be aware that is a thing, and he shouldn't want to be associated with that. That's my thoughts. But by all means, I get it. That is the mantra today. Get the bag. Get the bag. Yeah. So I totally get it.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jesse saying their motivation is money, and
Hmm.
he thinks the
I
meal
agree.
is called the Cactus Jack. Well, that's sacrilege because there's only one Cactus Jack, and he lives in Long Island, and his name is Mick Foley. So, bang bang.
That's yeah. Yep. I agree.
I might I should have done that because if I get caught up in any of it, like, oh, he did the guns. Ah,
No gun fingers, gun fingers. Oh my God.
he's
I
not a
just
big
hate how
deal.
PC things are now. You know what I mean? Like I said something about choking somebody out the other day on my podcast, and I was like, look, like we practice martial arts, and we choke each other all the time, and I'm not like threatening him. I'm saying like when we get to the gym, we're gonna choke him. That's what I mean. It's like you have to put a disclaimer out like that because it's like he's advocating violence. Sorry, you know.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because what I found, right? And I mean, I'm a forever white belt in jiu-jitsu, but I love it. I just love it. And I was actually going to go to 10 Planet Pasadena here, like in Pasadena, California,
Mhm.
so I could essentially one day win one of these. Oh, that
Oh
is a
yeah, not
Naga.
MAGA. Oh,
Yes.
NAGA. Okay.
No,
I think ours
Naga.
is MAGA out here.
No, 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 no. No, 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 no. Naga, which is the North American Grappling Association, right? And I never wanted to grow up and be a, I don't know, Olympian. I mean, even though Kurt Angle was cool and whatever, but that wasn't my
Hmm.
deal. So getting a medal for a jiu-jitsu competition, it has no relevance to me, not non
Hmm.
iota. But I want a purple belt in jiu-jitsu because you get one of these if you complete a Naga tournament and you win one
Yeah, it
at
is NAGA.
purple. It's no, it's like grappling
Yeah,
competition,
yeah.
just like
I just thought about it because somebody has one at our gym, and yeah, it is NAGA. I was like, I don't know why I thought it was MAGA, but
yeah.
whatever.
Well, I mean, those kind of N and M, they kind of are
Yeah, that is
interchangeable at
close.
this point. Yeah, but
Yeah,
but
hey,
I mean,
don't feel bad. I look, I'm a two-stripe white belt, and I tell you, I don't even get bent out of shape about it. I say I'm gonna be the baddest two-striper in the land. Like that's my whole thing. It's like I say all the time, if I get my card punched every time I always forget to get my card when class starts. I said I'm really a black belt, but I just don't ever get my stamps. so so I got two stripes on my white belt, and I'm okay with that. No ego here, man. I
that's
like
two
when there's a
stripes
guy
more
who's
than
like, "Oh, he's just a white belt." Yeah, come on. I'm like, "Yeah, come
yeah.
on."
Bring that heat, bring that heat. But and I guess kind of echoing the sentiments of I forgot the guy's name. Is it Jill Scott, Tavis? I don't know. Whoever the guy
Yeah,
is, but he's annoying. He has too much clout for all the wrong reasons. There you
yep,
go.
I agree.
Yeah, we got to train Adam. Make sure he get that belt. Thank you, Jesse. So I
Awesome.
mean, so there's that. But it's funny because if you've grappled, right? And
Yeah, sure.
before getting into jujitsu or any striking deal, right? And you stop, right?
Hmm.
Somebody might be cutting you off on the way to class, right? And you're like, oh, whatever, but and you're trying to get to class. Once you leave from class, that is the most centered. That's the most chi that you could bloody get.
Yep.
That same person can cut you off, and you're like, I don't give a damn because I went through the last 2 hours in 6 minute intervals, 3 to 6 minute
Yeah.
intervals of pure hell. People are
Yeah.
unceremoniously trying to detach my limbs from my body, and I
Hmm.
survived that. Like I mean, when I was training in Bakersfield, I mean, one of my teammates for a short time was Julia Avila,
Oh
who's
wow.
now in the UFC, Raging
Right.
Panda,
Right.
out of OKC. Well, she fights out of OKC now, but I mean, she literally set me like she pivot her hips. We were like stood on our feet, I pivot the hips, and she went this way. I went that way. I went a flying 10 feet,
Yeah.
10 feet, and landed at the feet of my wife. And it's yeah, it wasn't a good look. But I mean, I have no
No.
problem knowing that she's in the UFC, so there's that. But I mean, at any given time, like any person, there's 12-year-old kids that
No.
have been training since they were 5,
Dude,
and
my goal in our gym was to tap out a 16-year-old girl. And I say that, and people be like, oh, and I'm like, she's not a regular child. I mean, she looks cute and innocent. This ain't no regular kid. She is a mom. She's like, hey, you want to roll? And you're like, yeah, come on. And in a dangerously short amount of time, you will find yourself in horrible pain. I have witnessed her making grown men cry on 3 occasions. And I'm like, hey, man, don't you take it easy on her, and you'll get caught because you're like, all like elbow her a little bit or knee her. You're like, oh, I'm so sorry. She's like, no problem. And you're like, oh, tap, tap. And I got her in an omoplata one time. And I was like, I stood up and I almost put my foot on her chest and I was like, whoa, coach, guess what I just did? I just got Addison. It's like, it's bittersweet because people are like, come on, man, she's a kid. No, she's not. No, y'all not taking that away from me. I'm standing on that. This is a milestone for me, and I won't let you take my thunder. And she's like, yeah, come on, let's go. I'm like, no, we're not going again. I got to live in this moment for a little bit. No, I'm not going again. But and those people, and let me tell you something, because Ashton has done it before. I've gotten Ashton because that's my test. It's like, how long can I last against Ashton? And it's like, okay, 36 seconds. All right. Oh, shoot. I got to the point to where I was able to last for 3 minutes and some change. And I was like, oh, yeah, I'm the man. Yay. I messed around and got him one day. And he was like, yeah, that was pretty nice. And then I was like, yeah, you want to go? I was trying not to be excited because now this is different. This ain't a kid. This is another man. So I was like, yeah, good one, bro. And he's like, yeah, let's go again. 3 seconds. 3 seconds. And I love the fact that those high level purple belts and black belts, they have the ability to do that to you. And it's like, why did you trick me into thinking that I was actually holding my own? Like, why did you do that? You know what you can do. And it's amazing. My friend Jared, he does it. He'll have a conversation with somebody over there and he'll just be folding your arms up. And I'm like, and I'm struggling, trying so hard. I'm like really trying. And he's just having the conversation and he's telling them what he's about to do to you and why it's about to happen. And there's nothing you can do to stop it. And see, if he would just do this, then this wouldn't happen. And you're like, okay, now what's this one called? That's banana split. Feels like your butthole's getting ripped out. Yeah,
100%.
It's bad.
Oh, there was one time, man. I made the mistake, and I literally I'd just gotten off of work, and I was like, let me just throw a damn burrito in my mouth on my way to class and whatever. Yes. Guess what we did? Now we went neon bellies, like
my god,
neon bellies, right? And
that's how it works.
But none other than Yves Edwards was the coach.
Really?
Yes.
Such an honor.
And
such a privilege.
We're doing like neon bellies, and nobody wants to roll with the rather large Sasquatch of the class. He's a realtor now, Walter, and he still does jiu-jitsu. No, he's actually a black belt now, but he's like 6'4", probably about 260, 280, and whatever. And nobody wanted to cheat death, right? This guy, I'm like the only other person that without a partner. I tried to run to the bathroom, but it was too late. The bell had sounded and whatever, and I knew he was coming for me and whatever. And this is just the instruction and the neon belly, and I just buddy, not my proudest moment, but yeah,
totally.
Shit happens.
It does, and it will. With the right mixture, I promise. I did that one time. I had like I don't eat meat, so I have like my version of chili cheese fries, vegetarian chili cheese fries, and not before class. You just don't do it. It's just not and it seems like when you do those risque things like that, that's when you get punched in the stomach. That's when you get kneed in the stomach. That's when you get Komi Garusha. I always forget the names. It's like that's when you get chunked across the mat. It's like, oh my God, any other day, yeah, it happens like that. But one thing I'll tell you this: I love jiu-jitsu, and I love jiu-jitsu for this simple fact that jiu-jitsu is one of the first disciplines that I've trained in that one is highly effective, and two, you don't have to be a super athlete. You don't have to be super strong. You don't have to, you know what I mean, like run a marathon. Anybody can learn jujitsu, and anybody can be effective with jujitsu. Like other things like boxing, like the average Joe just couldn't become a boxer. But the average Joe could get involved in jujitsu and could really feel confident about a situation turning physical and him being okay with, I don't want to hurt anybody, but if it goes bad, I know that I can keep you from hurting me. And I feel like jujitsu should be a part of curriculum at school. I think that you will see a different interaction with children when they're involved in jujitsu, because let me tell you something, bullies, jujitsu is the bully medicine. It's like when you grab, I've seen a couple of videos where guys kind of fooled around with a guy and then he's in an arm bar and he's like, dude, if you don't stop, I'll break it. And just knowing that you can do that. And some of the nicest, kindest people I've ever met are so dangerous, have the
Yes.
ability to be so dangerous. And it's like that at Rock City MMA, man. Some of the just nicest guys. Yeah, I love seeing guys that come visit and then they think they're like, yeah, I'll go with this kid over here. It's like, okay. You think you picked out, oh, you just have no idea what you got in store for you. But I love that about jujitsu because and for those guys who come with those egos, it's a humbling experience when a 15-year-old, 98-pound kid chunks you over on your tail, grabs you, has his taint resting nicely on the side of your head, and has you in a Kimura. Like there's nothing else. Like you're like, everything about this situation is wrong. But I've seen kids who, in other situations, in other areas of life, you could see them being the dweeb or being the nerd, but because they're able to handle themselves that way, it's just a different kind of confidence. It's a different kind of, and they're not mean and they're not bullies. If anything, they are the rescuers. They are the kids who say, this ain't happening, homie. You're not going to do this, because they know, hey, I can make you stop that. And I feel like I've said this before, and it's not a very popular opinion amongst sure thing, buddy. All right, I'll see you in a little bit, okay? All right, thank you. But I've said this before, and it's not very popular with the people who are toxically sensitive. But to empower your children, I would rather empower my kid so that he's not thinking about taking his life because he can't cope with a bully at school. Right. I did a show one time and I talked about bullying, and I had some facts about bullying. 51% of kids report being a bully. 49% of children report being bullied. That's almost 50-50. So what that told me was that growing up, you're going to either be a bully at some point or you're going to be bullied at one point. Mm-hmm. And if my kid is on the other side of the spectrum and he may become bullied, what do I want to do? Do I want to coddle him? It's going to be okay, little buddy. It's going to be all right. Or do I want to empower him? Because I can't be there all the time. If you don't learn to stand up to the bully at school, how do you learn to stand up to the bullies of life? How do you learn how to stand up to your boss because he's taking advantage of you, because he sees that you want to do a good job? How do you stand up to your neighbor who won't cut that GD spruce that's coming all across your fence? And that's not to say that you deal with the bullies in the same fashion. It's the mentality. I will stand up for myself and I will use the proper channels to do that. But if you don't empower your children, they never become empowered as young adults and ultimately adults. And I'm not blaming a parent or blaming a kid for having suicidal thoughts due to bullying or anything like that. But what I'm saying is, let's stop trying to shield them, because it's a mean, cold world out there when we when we leave the house. And they need to be prepared for that. They need to be prepared for that. And I think that it's a disservice to a child if we send them out there thinking that everything is sunshine and roses, and then they get out there and, it's like they go into the workforce. They're like, hey, Come over here. Hey, my mom said I'm special. Not up in here, man. Get on this forklift and drive, drive this
Mhm.
forklift and put these packages up. Special, and it's like it's not, I don't want to be like to, this gloom and doom kind of thing, like, oh, it's a me world out there, not like that. But I do want them to have a realistic expectation of what awaits them when they leave my house. Every person that you're going to meet isn't nice. Everybody that you meet, they don't have your best interests at heart. They're going to be people who say unkind things to you, and you have to. Now, personally, it may not be right. My daughter had a situation with bullying, and she came and she's like, I'm being bullied at school. Well, I put on my Reeboks, laced them up, and was like, hey, let's do this, And she's like, I was like, who put their hands on you? And she's like, oh, nobody. Wait, you said you're getting bullied. I have a different mindset. When I was in school, bullying meant you got a busted lip or a black eye. That's what
Mhm.
bullying accompanied one of those. So she's like, no, these girls are talking to me, this, that, and the third. They call me a teacher's pet. They call me, know it all because I be answering questions. I was like, wait a minute, you're talking about roasting? And I was like, that ain't even quality roasting right there, and I gave I was like, let me teach you how to roast first. I said, because you want to feel good about yourself and you got to jab back. And I was like, but on the back end, pray for these young ladies because usually kids that act out like that in school don't have the greatest home life. That was my experience growing up. I was like, but you are a human and you got feelings. So let me tell you, sweetheart, are these black girls? Said yes. And I said, let me guess. They got a ponytail that's about that long. She said yes. I said, oh, there's 6 jokes right there. That's 6 jokes right there. I said, see, this was a sport, and you had to know this sport when I was growing up in order to survive middle school, high school. It was a sport. 2 dudes would face off like battle rappers, and I was poor, so I would be there. And last thing you want to do is be the poor kid that laughs too loud. Oh,
Yes.
what you laughing at? What? And you're like, oh, listen, excuse me. I have nothing to say about this. I don't got no dog in this fight. Yeah, what are those? I was like, yeah, that's old, you know.
Yeah.
But I told her I started to jab back, and she come home. She was like, Dad, guess what? Guess what? She was like, I told her her ponytail looked like a paintbrush, And I was like, oh, that's pretty good, That's a good one. She was like, and I asked God to make her life better at home. And long story short, by the end of the school year, we became friends, and they moved on. But that could have turned into a situation where my daughter's at home having suicidal thoughts. And I'm not acting like I got parenting all figured out because she's 15. She's a weirdo. So, like I get it. And I think I'm cool. I think I'm a cool parent. I can backflip. Like I can run a mile in like 4 minutes, 4.5, if but I'm like, I fight. Like me and my friends beat each other up, choke each other out. I got tattoos. I'm a cool parent. I'm not. I'm not. And it's like, I was like my mom's an old lady. You know what I mean? It's like, I could see her not being cool, but I'm cool. I know what's
Yeah.
going on. I'm not. You'll never be cool to your kids is what I found out. But
And don't feel bad. Don't feel bad because I mean this is obviously like pre-COVID. Went
right.
to see Phil Collins at the Forum, and
Oh,
as
I'm so
I don't know if you
jealous.
know, yeah. Oh, it was incredible. But
I bet.
his back and foot are all jacked up and everything like that. So he actually had his son, his 17-year-old son Nicholas, behind the kit for him, doing being his drummer, right? So um,
Sweet.
and there's this moment where like the rest of the band, leaves, and then Nicholas comes from the kit, a piano appears just magically out of thin air, right? And then Phil's talking, and he's just like, after prepping for this tour, we're talking, my entire catalog. I mean, Genesis stuff and my solo stuff and whatever. Nicholas has to learn all of it because on any given night we could be playing this or somebody could call it
Right.
out, right? And he thinks it's cool, but like of all of the stuff that I've done, right? And I'm a humble guy, from England or whatever, but of all of the things that I've done, Do you know how many songs my kid actually likes of mine? And I'm paying him to be my drummer. Do you know how many songs that he likes?
How many?
Just
Which
one.
one? Which one?
He's like this weird B side of a Genesis, like when Peter Gabriel. This is even before Phil took the lead singer deal. This is
Right.
like Peter Gabriel, like 77 or whatever. But that was the one,
Wow.
and he was just like, "If you guys don't mind, we're gonna play for you." And and it was like it's a heartwarming moment because we've all fucking been there where we ain't shit to our kids.
Right.
So if Phil Collins could have that, right? And
Yeah.
he sang,
And
and
he's
Nick
like,
played piano or whatever, then
yeah.
we okay. It's gonna be all right.
Right. Right. That's yeah. It's disheartening, but Phil, Phil
Our grandkids
Collins.
though, our grandkids will think we're cool as shit.
Yeah, that's who's gonna be fascinated. Yeah.
Yes,
Oh,
it's the
tell me
second
more.
generation.
Yep. Because they're like going through it with us, and they're like figuring like, like, are you really doing that? And I'm like, yeah, I'm a fight. And she's like, oh, that's so barbaric. And I'm like, all right. I'm like, hey, man, most of your friends' dads like got pot bellies, you know what I'm saying? And I'm like, come on, you don't think this? She used to go to the boxing matches. I don't think she's been to one MMA fight. But my son on the other hand, he loves it, and he's a weirdo because he roots for the other guy. Like he's happy when I get hit. You know what I mean? Yeah, he's like a little dweeb. He's like, I thought you was gonna lose, and I'm like, were you rooting against me? I was like, I think if he's old enough, he would be betting against me. Yeah, I swear he would take bets against
Well, then I would be my ultimate contract is you get that motherfucker to buy you a Travis Scott meal.
me. Right. The Travis Scott meal.
But dude, I mean, talk about things that aren't barbaric, right? But they might be barbaric to some. Talk to us about the Angry Nerd podcast. Literally, like my favorite podcast right now, and I even
Well,
including mine in that because I think your work in the short tenure that you have is amazing. You bring so much. Like I almost wanted to say when Aaron was like, "Oh yes, this is happening," I'm like, "Yo, Aaron, you and I need to get our shit together because Mr. Wade is gonna fucking blow us out of the water." But how did that all come about?
well, I wanted to do a podcast. I've always wanted to do it, and and I said, you know what? I'm not gonna let nothing stop me. I was actually a part of another podcast pilot. It kind of didn't get off the ground a little bit with some girls that I met them on Facebook too. I met them on Facebook, and what it was, somebody put me in a group on Facebook, and I was already doing the research, trying to start a podcast and all that kind of stuff. And so I started putting and don't choke me because it's in my brain. I can't stop saying Mimi. I know this is called a meme, but I say Mimi, and my daughter's
Yeah,
like, it's a meme, and I was like, I say Mimi. And anyway, so I would always put like Mimi's up and stuff in the group. And I always would share like candidly share my opinion about different posts and stuff like that. And they made me, what do you call it, a moderator in the group, maybe like a moderator in the group. And then one day there were two girls in particular that I noticed had really good, they spoke well. They could spell words, that had more than two syllables in them. And both of them are attractive women and appear to be, educated and things like that. And I was like, hey man, I was thinking about doing a podcast, blase, blase. And they were like, hey, we were just talking about you the other day. We're forming a podcast. We wanted to know if you'd be a part of it, and I was like, awesome, because I think that the male female dynamics, I think that it works because of course she's going to be way over here. I'm going to be way over here, and it worked. And I feel like that's a really good a balance. So we did a couple of little things. We tried to do some stuff, and I don't know. It just got to the point that it was like it was being overcomplicated, and it kind of just crumbled. And I was like, but I got bit by the bug already. So I've already been doing this research, and I've already been doing this, and I bootlegged me a background, and I figured out how to work Zoom and everything like that. So I was like, welcome to the Angry Nerd Podcast. You got the Angry, and it just went from there. That was already my handle. So, I just was like, boom, I started doing it by myself. And I've stuck with it. And it's been about 6 months or so now, and I'm just being consistent every Wednesday at 8. I changed the time to 9 because I was training for a fight. And once I decided that that was going to be my last fight, then I went back to 8 p.m. Central Standard Time every Wednesday, and I broadcast live from Facebook because it's all I can afford right now. So it's like I want to get to the point to where I have, like the cameras and the production and everything like that. But I'm gonna do what the advice that I got from Google, which was just start where you're at and be consistent. And I'm gonna try to do my best to continue to bring information. Sometimes it's gonna be funny, sometimes it's gonna be heavy, sometimes it's going to be random. It's just like I'll just talk. But I'm just going to go in the direction that I feel led in, because it may not be information that I share or stories that I share may not be for me. It may be for somebody who's listening who was like, damn, I was going through something today, man. I'm glad you said that. And I was speaking to a guy from the rehab the other day, and I told him, man, always share your story because you never know who's listening. And I've had it happen to me a number of times where guys have inboxed me, or a guy at the rehab I was speaking at pulled me to the side and said, hey, man, thank you for sharing that because I was going through that. And it's like, you might get one guy every blue moon that does that, but that one person will keep you going. Keep you energized, and you keep doing it. And then it's like you get a bunch of those stories, and then you realize, man, there are some people out here that want to hear what I have to say, and there are people out here who care about what I say. And I've said things to people that have saved people's lives according to them. I've said things that have altered the course of people's lives according to them. So and I've done that in rehabs and NA and AA meetings and things like that, and just working with young men that happen to be at my job or whatever the case may be, sharing that information with them. And I have impacted people, and I said, you know what, I'm gonna talk. God gave me the ability and the lung power to speak at length about almost anything, and I have an opinion about most things. So there it is, man. I'm just gonna keep doing that, and I'm gonna try to give the fans what they want. I know Aaron Vincent and his family, they listen to the show. Now I know that you do. Dylan Brackley at the Savage Hippie and Jim McDonough, those guys at Savage Hippie, they all listen. I love those guys. And, I've been talking with them, and we talking about men's mental health and just, creating a forum to where, a guy can reach out to another guy and say, hey, man, is somebody available to talk? Because in this country, we have been socialized and we have been conditioned to hold our shit in, to ignore our shit. We have been. And there hasn't been a lane or a platform available for men to express themselves in a positive pro-social way. There just hasn't been. And we spoke about that. And Dylan started a Facebook, a messenger, started a messenger group. And I want to keep adding guys to it and make sure the guys have a way to reach out because the numbers are staggering. Men are taking their lives in this country. You know what I mean? Because they don't have an outlet. There's nobody saying that it's okay to feel like that. I've felt inadequate before. I've been there. As we say in recovery, this too shall pass. This shit ain't gonna be always. Don't let this shit beat you, and you don't have to face it alone. You do not have to face it alone. You got homies out here that will ride with you. And when I say men, that doesn't just limit to heterosexual men. There are homosexual men, there are trans men, and all. I say men, anybody who wants to be under that umbrella that needs somebody's shoulder to cry on or somebody's ear to bend, that is open to you. Because the institution of manhood is something that has not been promoted. The
Right.
institution of manhood is something that has not been promoted in a positive way in this country. When you think about men, you think about misogyny, you think about Me Too, you think about all these negative things, and you never stop to think, how the fuck is dad doing? It's
Yeah.
like dad can handle whatever. A lot of guys who grew up with their dads, it's like, but dad's my hero. Dad's like Superman. Dad can handle anything. Dad has fucking problems too. Dad is not made of concrete and steel. Dad is a flesh and blood human being, just like mom. And it's like mom, not to diminish the importance of women and their thing, but they have a platform. They have so many outlets to where they can go and express themselves, and men don't. Our lane is very narrow. But mom has that. And mom gets, oh, looks like mom's had a long day. Ah, what about me? I have to. You think I like wearing boots? No, I do not like wearing boots, but I have to wear them to put tofu on the table. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? And so many people, so many men get overlooked. And I always say this because there are always the naysayers who are like, oh, we're crybaby. No, it's not oh woe to men, but it is, hey, we're here and we're humans and we have all that stuff y'all got going on. We've been taught to put it in a box, lock it up in the inside, and let it turn into cancer and kill us one day. That's what we've been taught. We haven't been taught to express ourselves and to talk things out. We haven't been taught that. So we have to learn that. And I always take the stand of saying, hey, dog, I'm here for you. I'm here for you if you ever want to talk. Look, shoot me a text. I might not be able to get to you. Look, I'll be free at this time. Hey, dog, I need to talk to you, man. Just need somebody to talk to. And we got to get better at reaching out because it's hard to send that text. It's hard to send that text. Why? Because we've been conditioned. What does that mean? If you're reaching out, you need help. Pussy, weenie, wimp, sissy. What does that mean when a man asks for help? How many men have you seen moving into an apartment? He's got a couch and he's like going up the stairs.
Yeah.
That's what we do because we've been taught, we have been conditioned to believe that to ask for help is to diminish your capacity as a man, to diminish your value as a man. And that's the kind of thing that people like Savage Hippie, that's the kind of thing that Aaron Benson, that's the kind of things that we've talked about. And that's the kind of stuff that we want to promote. It's like, this is manhood. I've heard toxic masculinity. I don't want to live in that space. Masculinity, we just want to be men. We just want to be men and we want to help other men become better men. Simple as that.
No, 100%. And Aaron Vincent says, man up ain't always the answer,
No.
100%.
No, it's not.
Now, dude, I mean, there's been so many people that have been instrumental in your evolution as a man, right?
Yeah.
As a father, as a husband. So let's get some shout outs out of the way. Like, go everybody and anybody that's helped you get to where you are.
Man, I'm gonna start from the most recent and work my way all the way back to the young nerd. With Nathan Kirby and the Rock City MMA family. Shout out to all those guys. I want to give a huge shout out to Jeremy McKenzie at Covenant Recovery. He's the director of Covenant Recovery Center in Pine Bluff, Arkansas. One of the greatest people I've ever met. Santrice Kearney, she's the counselor that I worked for when I was incarcerated. She was my higher power for a long time, and I still have the greatest love and admiration for her and her family. Shout out to them. I want to give a special thank you to one of the greatest human beings I ever met. His name is Walter Webb, and he's just the greatest guy, and he's incarcerated. Bad mistake, and the greatest human being I've ever met in the history of my life. And so I want to give a shout out to him, and I also want to give a shout out to Willie Coleman, the guy who first started teaching the Angry Nerd how to box. He just wanted to keep me out of the streets. Just keep coming to the gym. Willie just wanted to keep me out of the streets and keep me in the gym. And here I am now. And I also want to thank my mom. I want to thank my mom 100% because I know how difficult it is for me and my wife being being married and having a family and two incomes and everything like that. So I could only imagine how difficult it was, especially after my dad passed, to, you know, have 5 kids and to do her very best to try to keep us all, you know, together, to keep us all sane and reasonably happy. So I know how difficult that's been. But those are the people who stand out to me in my life. And of course, there's some friends along the way who say, well, what about me? Man, I love y'all too, man.
You know
But
who
that's
you
it.
are.
That's where I am. Yeah, you totally know who you are. But those are all the pivots. You know what I mean? Like it was like I kind of like went from this family to this family to this family, and that's kind of how it's been for me. And now it's like whether Aaron Vincent knows it or not. I'm kidding.
Ah, there you go. No,
Yeah.
but that was almost masterful, you know.
Yeah, totally.
Now,
Totally.
for those who haven't already done so, where can they find out about you, Mr. Wade?
Oh,
More about the Angry Nerd podcast, like everything. What's the deets?
well, follow me on Facebook. On Facebook, it's the Angry Nerd Podcast, or you can just follow me, Arshion Wade. And then on Instagram, it's Angry Nerd, the Angry Nerd Podcast on Instagram. And what else was it? Oh yeah, and you can catch the show. I broadcast live from Facebook Live as I'm recording it for Podbean, Spotify, and YouTube. Personally, I like to listen to it on Podbean because you get all my drops and my sound effects and all that kind of stuff on there, and you miss that experience on Facebook Live. A lot of people like to get on Facebook Live because they're there, they can interact. But if you listen to it on Podbean, like I upload it the next day around 9 o'clock, it automatically does it for me to Podbean and YouTube and Spotify as well. So, and I feel like Spotify or Podbean are the two best ways to listen to it because you get all of the audio, you get the background music, and you also get the drops because every now and again I put a boo or a blah or a bomb or something like that. So you get all that the total experience whenever you go and you listen on Spotify or Podbean.
I
And
love it,
and on
and
Podbean or Spotify, it's the Angry Nerd Podcast.
yeah, I love it because I think yours and the Cage Theory podcast with Blake Troop are the reasons why I got Podbean. So thank you for that. I mean, that's a download well spent for sure.
Awesome.
Well, dude, thank you for joining us. This has been incredible, and I mean, dude, you've got like open door policy here at According to Woods, my man. But he is Arshawn Wade. I'm According to Woods, and if you haven't already done so, to not just the Angry Nerd podcast, but also hey, According to Woods,
Awesome.
like, share, and subscribe. This very link, I'd appreciate it. Because yeah, it's cool. It's cool. You guys are cool, and I hope you guys are safe. But we are out.
All right. Peace.